I worked for a mid-sized tech company for 3 long years. My boss, Gary, was the kind of guy who took credit for everyone's work while spending 4 hours a day at power lunches. Last month, I finally finished a massive database migration that saved the company over $200,000 in annual licensing fees. My contract clearly stated I was entitled to a 5% performance bonus, exactly $10,000. When I walked into Gary's office, he didn't even look up from his phone. When I brought up the bonus, he actually laughed. He told me, and I quote, "The economy is tough, kid. We had to cut the bonus pool to keep the lights on." Meanwhile, I knew for a fact that Gary had just put a down payment on a brand new Porsche. He told me I should be grateful to even have a desk in his office. That was the moment I decided to burn it all down, legally, of course. You see, Gary is tech illiterate. He thinks the cloud is actually in the sky. He didn't realize that I was the only person with the master encryption keys for the new database. I had a security update scheduled for 8 a.m. the next morning. If those keys weren't manually rotated by an admin, the entire system would go into lockdown. I handed him my resignation letter right then and there. He smirked and said, "Go ahead, leave. I'll have a cheaper replacement in your chair by Monday." The next morning, I slept in. It was glorious. At 8:15 a.m., my phone started exploding. 50 missed calls from Gary, 20 texts. He was screaming in my voicemail that the system was down and the CEO was losing his mind because a $100,000 deal was stuck in the pipeline. Gary tried to bypass my security 5 times and ended up triggering a permanent hardware lock. He was cooked.
My manager at the warehouse, let's call him Kevin, was obsessed with efficiency. But his version of efficiency was making everyone work unpaid overtime while he sat in his air-conditioned office watching Netflix. Last Friday, at 4:55 p.m., I was packing my bag to leave. I had tickets to a concert I'd been waiting 6 months for. Kevin walked out and dropped a massive pile of shipping manifests on my desk. He said, "I need these all manually scanned and entered into the system by tonight. No exceptions. If you leave before it's done, don't bother coming in on Monday." I pointed at the clock and told him my shift ended in 5 minutes. He just smirked and said, "I don't care. Follow my instructions exactly or you're fired." That was his mistake. He told me to follow his instructions exactly. Our company handbook has a very specific rule. All manual data entry must be double verified by a supervisor for safety and insurance purposes. Usually, we skip this to save time. Not today. I sat down and started scanning. For every single page, I walked into Kevin's office, interrupted his show, and made him sign a physical verification form. He told me to stop bothering him, but I reminded him, "I'm following your instructions exactly, Kevin. Manual entry requires supervisor signatures. You said no exceptions." I stayed until 2 a.m. I missed my concert, but Kevin had to stay there with me the entire time, signing 300 individual forms because I refused to process them in batches. He was exhausted and furious. The best part, since I stayed past midnight, I triggered double overtime pay according to my state's labor laws. My paycheck for that one night was bigger than my entire week's salary. Kevin got a massive reprimand from corporate for the unnecessary labor costs, and I got a paid day off. Follow the rules, guys. It pays off.
Back in high school, I had a history teacher, Mr. Davies, who loved to pick on students he thought were troublemakers. I was pretty quiet, but I usually got C's or D's because I worked 2 jobs and was always exhausted. He'd constantly call me out in class, demanding I answer difficult questions just to see me fail and then laugh about it. One day, we had a major exam. I had actually studied for weeks, determined to get a decent grade. When I turned my test in, I was confident. But the next day, Mr. Davies threw my paper on my desk with a big 0 and CHEATER written across the top in red marker. He announced to the entire class that I must have stolen the answers because a kid like me couldn't possibly get an A. He even called my parents and threatened to get me suspended. I was furious, but I knew I was innocent. I demanded he show me exactly why he thought I cheated. He smugly pointed to one of the short answer questions and said, "Your wording is almost identical to the textbook. You clearly just memorized it without understanding." I looked at him and said, Mr. Davies, you assigned that exact chapter as reading for the last 3 weeks. I've read it so many times, I practically memorized it. Ask me any question from that chapter right now, from memory. He thought it was a bluff and started firing questions. I answered every single one, quoting sentences and details without missing a beat. The entire class was silent, watching this teacher's face turn from smug to pure shock as he realized he'd just been proven wrong by the quiet kid. He had to change my grade, but the best part was seeing him avoid eye contact with me for the rest of the year. Karma exists, Mr. Davies.
I've lived in this quiet neighborhood for 5 years, and it was perfect. That was until a woman I'll call Karen moved in next door 6 months ago. From day one, she complained about everything: my lawn height, the color of my curtains, and especially my car. I drive a slightly older but well-maintained SUV. To her, it was trash that lowered her property value. Last Tuesday, I woke up at 7 a.m. to a loud, metallic clanking sound outside. I looked out my bedroom window, and my jaw literally dropped. There was a massive commercial tow truck backed up into my private driveway, and the driver was already hooking up the front wheels of my car. I didn't even put on shoes. I sprinted outside, screaming, "Stop! What the hell are you doing? That's my car on my property!" The driver looked at me, then at a clipboard, looking confused. But before he could speak, Karen stepped out from behind the truck. She had this smug, victorious smile on her face. "Oh, good, you're awake," she said, crossing her arms. "I'm doing you a favor. This junk is an eyesore and it's ruining the neighborhood's aesthetic. I called them to remove this abandoned vehicle." I was shaking with anger. "Abandoned? I drove it to work yesterday. You called a private towing company to trespass on my land and steal my car?" Karen just rolled her eyes. "It's a communal effort to keep this street looking elite. Driver, please continue. I'll pay the fee." The driver started to lift the car, but that's when I remembered my recent upgrade. I pointed to the small, blinking black circle right above my garage door. "Stop right there," I said, my voice getting calm. "See that? That's a 4K Nest security camera. It's been recording this entire conversation. It also recorded you, Karen, trespassing on my property at 2 a.m. last night to check my VIN number and take photos of my interior." The tow truck driver's face went from neutral to pale in a second. He stopped the hydraulics immediately. "Ma'am," he barked at Karen, "you told me over the phone this was a shared parking zone and the owner had abandoned the vehicle weeks ago. You lied to me." I stepped closer to Karen. "I'm giving you exactly 5 seconds to tell this man to unhook my car. If you don't, I'm calling the police right now. I'll press charges for attempted grand theft auto and trespassing. I have the footage, the audio, and the driver here is my witness." Karen's face turned a shade of red I've never seen before. She tried to scream about neighborhood standards, but the driver didn't want to hear it. He unhooked my car so fast it almost bounced. "I'm not getting losing my license for your petty drama," the driver told her. He then handed her a bill. "That'll be a $150 false call-out fee, payable right now, or I'm calling my boss." Karen had to pay him right there on the sidewalk, while I stood on my porch, recording the whole thing on my phone. She hasn't looked at me since, and she even started parking her own car inside her garage, so I can't look at it. Karma is beautiful. It was launch day for the new iPhone, and I had been camping outside the Apple store since 4 a.m. I was third in line. Around 8 a.m., just before the doors opened, a teenager in designer clothes hopped out of a yellow Lamborghini and walked straight to the front. He looked at me and the 2 guys in front of me like we were stray dogs. "Hey," he said, tapping my shoulder with a stack of $100 bills. "I don't do lines. Here's $500. Give me your spot." I looked at him and said, "No thanks, man. I've been here all night. Money isn't everything." The kid laughed. "500 is more than you make in a month, kid. Don't be stupid." He then tried to physically push me out of the way to stand behind the first guy. The first guy in line, a middle-aged man in a plain gray hoodie, turned around. "Son, go to the back of the line like everyone else," he said calmly. The brat went ballistic. "Do you know who my father is? He's a major investor in this city. I'll have this whole mall shut down. Move, old man." He actually tried to grab the man's hoodie to pull him out of line. The man in the hoodie didn't move an inch. He just pulled out a phone, made a quick call, and said, "Security to the main entrance, now." 2 seconds later, 4 massive security guards appeared. The brat started smirking. "Yeah, kick these bums out so I can get my phone." But the guards didn't touch us. They grabbed the brat by the arms. One of the guards looked at the man in the gray hoodie and said, "Is there a problem, Mr. Cook?" The man in the hoodie nodded. "This young man is harassing customers and attempted to assault me. He is banned from this store for life. Please escort him to his Lamborghini." The kid's face went white. He didn't realize the old man in the plain hoodie was actually the regional manager who owned 3 of the biggest tech franchises in the state. As they dragged him away, crying about his dad, the manager turned to me and the other guy and said, "For your patience, the first 2 phones today are on the house." I walked out 10 minutes later with a free iPhone and a huge smile. Karma is the best currency.